This person was also born in the late 1800s, 1884, Harry Truman. He was the 33rd president of the United States, came into power as president when FDR died in the middle of World War II, the height of World War II, really. It's estimated that he was instrumental in ending World War II and actually saved the lives of U.S. soldiers, like 300,000 of them, by ending the war. So what do you think? Good guy, bad guy? Good guy? Raise your hand for good guy. Oh, wait, there's one other thing I have to tell you. He also ordered the dropping of 2 atomic bombs that killed 200,000 Japanese men, women, and children, non-combatants. Anybody want to change their vote? Sometimes it's not so black and white as Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler, isn't it? I don't know. Well, take a look at this one and see what you think. This is Angie Wood, one of those grandchildren we were talking about earlier. Born August 29th, 2019. She is completely self-centered. She demands to be fed and cleaned every 3 hours and has absolutely no regard for the welfare of her parents. Good or bad? These last 2 pictures really bring to mind the idea that sometimes it's not so clear, good or bad. And in fact, situations or developmental levels or maybe some other things really play a part in that whole good or bad. In fact, most people would agree that, nobody ever agrees on everything, but most people would agree that people, when they show signs of altruism or kindness or honesty, those kinds of characteristics, we kind of lump them in that good pile. But we know that everybody has good traits and everybody has bad traits. We as humans do wonderful, incredible acts of kindness. We see those on TV sometimes, don't we? We will even give people our own blood if they need it. We do great sacrificial things for other people. You hear about people standing in front of someone to keep them from being shot. We do great acts of kindness. But we also know that people do incredibly evil things or bad things. We know that people shoot other people. 90% of the women who were shot in Tennessee last year were shot by somebody they know. Look, think about the people you know. Do you need to be worried? I don't know. We live in a society where someone will walk into a room full of first graders 2 weeks before Christmas and kill all of them. So how can we kind of balance that? How do we see the difference? Somebody wrote, "We are the wisest, most intelligent, most principled species that has ever been on the earth. But at the same time, we're the lowest, cruelest, and most destructive species that has ever lived." Do you agree with that? Does that rings true with what we hear, isn't it? I don't know. So, think about this. How do you learn to be good? As a parent, I've thought about how did I teach my children to be good? And I can distinctly remember when they were in elementary school, I always took them to school and just let them out there in front of the school, with 8,000 other parents. And the last thing I always said to them as they got out of the car, it was our little ritual that we did every day. I love you, be good. Now, what I was saying when I was telling them be good was not so much what to do to be good. What I was telling them was, and they knew this, don't do anything that will cause you to have to go to the principal's office and I will have to come down here. Okay? They knew that. When they got older and had a car, that was number one mistake. Well, it probably wasn't number one, but it was on down the list. Anyway, when they would start out the door as teenagers, I would say to them, I love you, be good. Okay, now what I was saying to them was not what to do to be good, but I was telling them, don't do something stupid so you get killed. Number two, don't do something so that I see your name in the newspaper. Okay? That's what I was telling them. As people, we have developed a really high sense of morality. We understand what good and bad is. You didn't have any trouble telling the difference between Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler, did you? You knew that difference. We understand good and bad. We understand what it means to suffer. Not just our own suffering, but the suffering of others. Why do you think they show you those commercials of dogs that have been starved and they want you to send money to the ASPC or whatever that is? Okay? We understand suffering. We know what we have to do to be good, but that's not what we always choose to do. Even those of you who are brave enough to stand up and say think of yourself as a good person, I'm guessing you don't always choose to do the good thing. We know one of the foundations of this morality that we have developed is the idea of empathy. I had to go back to the dictionary again. But the dictionary says the understanding of what hurts me hurts you is what empathy is. So what hurts me, I understand, will also hurt you. I looked into that a little further. If you take a brain scan of two people who are married to each other, husband and wife, and you do an MRI to look at that, and you tell them both that they're going to receive a little electric shock. I'm not sure why they signed up for this, but they did. Okay, so they know they're going to get an electric shock. If you look on in the MRI, their brain will light up in a certain pattern. Okay? Now, the interesting part of this is that if you tell one of them that they are not going to receive the shock, but that their mate is going to receive the shock, even if they can't see their mate, their brain still lights up in the same pattern as if they themselves were going to receive the shock. That's empathy. That's that we understand that what hurts me hurts you. And they would dread their person that they care about having that shock, just like they would dread it for themselves. Now, just because we know the difference in good and bad, it doesn't mean we always do the right thing. Okay? But most people believe we have some inborn programming. We have programming for speech, for instance. So I have this genetic ability for speech. And if I grow up in the United States, I speak English. But if I grow up in Romania, I speak something else. Okay? But that inborn programming made me able to learn the speech that I heard. Okay? We also, most people think, have an inborn programming for morality and for good and bad, which means that we probably start to act good or bad, at least in some situations, the way we see other people act, good or bad. Obviously, we're all influenced by different people. We're influenced by different cultures. This can directly affect whether we're willing to help somebody who's in distress. Now, think about this. One of the ways that we show people who are growing up, children, and others in our society, what is good, how we're supposed to act, is by storytelling. Think about every Disney movie you have ever seen. Okay? You got the good guy, sometimes wearing a white hat, sometimes not, saving the damsel in distress, who's usually a princess, whether we know it at the beginning or not, from the bad guy, the guy in the black hat. Okay, we identify him that way. The guy who steals, the guy who lies, the guy who cheats, the guy who tries to get the treasure who does something that we identify as bad. We tell those stories in all different forms to convey to children those things are bad. Because what happens in the end? They all live happily ever after because they did the good thing. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Stories help us articulate to others in our culture what we expect of them. It helps us to pass our values along to children. Now, something that we are just starting to think about, I think, or maybe it's just me who's just starting to think about it, is this whole idea of we have a tendency to give more help to people who are like us. Maybe that's ethnicity, maybe that's socioeconomic level, maybe that's religion, maybe that's some other factor. But people who are like us, we are more inclined to give assistance to. Research also shows us that if we can dehumanize others, then we don't feel guilty if we don't help them. And there are some ways that we do that. We identify how they are different. We call them names. We talk about them like rats, you dirty rat, that whole idea. Or animals, or rapists, or some other thing. Jesus haters. We have all kinds of names and have for hundreds of years. And when we do that, we dehumanize them. We make them different from us so that we don't think they feel pain like we feel pain. We don't have empathy for them. Think about Nazi Germany. Think about ethnic wars in Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Those are examples of this. When we depict people as different from us, as not the same as us, we don't feel empathy for them, and we don't have to treat them like we treat the people in our group. For a long time, communities have developed layers and layers of systems to encourage good behavior, that elusive good behavior. The legal system is an example. Okay? We started out originally with the 10 Commandments. Well, it's expanded from there. Dr. Dye's husband's a lawyer. He'll tell you, there's a lot of laws. You can almost do anything and break a law. It's incredible. But we have that whole legal system. And we know if we break those laws, if we don't do the good thing, what will happen to us? Now, my husband reminds me, he's something of a cynic, that you can have all the justice you can afford. But in the end, people who do enough bad things end up where? This is where you all talk. Where do you end up if you break laws? Jail, exactly. Nobody wants to go to jail, okay? Yes, they will feed you. Yes, you can just kind of sit around, but you really don't want to be there, trust me. So, we have laws that guide us toward good behavior. Other groups in our society also have ways of shaping your behavior. Religions do it. If you go outside what your religious culture would say is the good thing to do, then we do something called shunning. Some groups call it excommunication. We just say, you do this or you can't be in our group. We do the same thing in fraternities and social clubs. If you don't conform, you don't stay in the group. Even the military will put you out if you don't do the right thing. So we have some expectations that are conveyed to us as we go along so that we know what we're supposed to do. Well, in my culture, growing up in a Southern Christian home, the Bible really was kind of the ultimate, here are the rules kind of book. And so my parents taught me by telling me the stories that Jesus taught to give examples of the right thing to do. In thinking about what the Bible had to say about goodness, the obvious example came to mind, the Good Samaritan. And I told you, or ask you, to read that for today. So let me just give a quick little run through of what Jesus said, and then we'll talk about that. Jesus replied with an illustration. A Jew going on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes and money and beat him up and left him laying half dead beside the road. By chance, a Jewish priest came along, and when he saw the man laying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A Jewish temple assistant walked over, looked at him lying there, but then went on. But a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw him, he felt deep pity, empathy. Kneeling beside him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with medicine, bandaged him. Then he put the man on his donkey, and he walked along beside him till they came to an inn, where he nursed him through the night. The next day, he handed the innkeeper two $20 bills and told him to take care of the man. If his bill runs higher than this, he said, I'll pay you the difference the next time I'm here. Okay, let's look at some pieces of this. First off, the first two people that saw this man laying by the side of the road, we probably would have, if I had flashed their picture up here, identified as good, wouldn't we? Priest, temple assistant, seems like they'd be good people. Did they actually do something that was good for this man? No, they didn't. Just walked on by. One of them looked at him. That was helpful. I don't know, maybe he thought he was dead, went on his way. But then we come to the third person who comes down the road. And what does Jesus call him? Does he just call him a man? No. Does he just call him a Samaritan? Nope. He calls him a despised Samaritan. That seems pretty harsh. But there was a difference between Jews and Samaritans, wasn't there? Or at least they saw it as a difference. And they didn't like each other. So we got this guy who is identified as despised. Okay? And what does he do? Gets off his donkey, goes over. He sees the man is really badly hurt. He does the nurse thing. Okay? He bandages him up. He loads him onto his donkey, which means now he has to walk. And they go to the next Holiday Inn. Okay? They get to the Holiday Inn. He tells the guy at the counter, found this guy by the road. I'm going to take care of him during the night. I'm going to leave you money, my own money, to take care of him after I'm gone. And if you need more money to take care of him, go ahead and spend it. I'll pay the bill when I come back. Makes you think he uses this Holiday Inn pretty often. So the guy knows him. I don't know. Pretty succinct story. So why do you think Jesus took the time to tell the story? He could have just said, the question he was answering was, who's my neighbor? So he could have just said, when they said, who's my neighbor? He could have just said, everybody. Just take care of everybody. Be nice to everybody. Did he think they would really understand that? I don't think so. I don't think he would have told the story. He wanted them to understand that, yes, you need to take care of Jewish people, the ones who are like you, but you also need to take care of people that you identify as other, the despised Samaritans. Okay, it wasn't just this particular Samaritan that was despised, turns out. It was all of them. Now, that's where Jesus ended his story. But as I read that story over several times, thinking in terms of talking to you all about it, I started thinking about what happened the next day, or that evening even, when the innkeeper went home. I'm guessing he went through the front door. His wife was getting supper on the table. He said, hi, honey, how's your day? She said, oh, fine. How was yours? And he said, you aren't going to believe what happened. And then he tells his wife what happened. This Samaritan drugged this half-dead Jew into the Holiday Inn, is going to take care of him tonight. He's going to leave him there with money to take care of him for the next few days. What do you think of a Samaritan like that? I think there are several things his wife could have said at that time. Maybe she said, sit down, your supper's getting cold, which is probably what I would have said. But she also could have said, I think that's one crazy Samaritan. How did he know those people weren't still hiding in the bushes? And when he got off his donkey to take care of this guy, they could have jumped on him. Or I think she could have said, I think he's a pretty foolish Samaritan. Because if he had met this Jew walking down the street, the Jew probably wouldn't even have given him the time of day. But I like to think that what she said was, I think he was a good Samaritan. Because he looked beyond who was in my group and he took care of somebody else. He gave care to somebody else. Anthony Burgess, who wrote one of my favorite books, The Clockwork Orange, said, goodness is something chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man. Read that again. Goodness is something chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man. Okay, so we already said we have this genetic pre-programming that sets us up to learn what's good and what's not. We watch the people around us to learn good behavior. We hear stories that tell us how to be good. But that doesn't bring us to good behavior, does it? We have to make that choice. We have to choose to do the good thing. So what are you going to do this week or next week that's good? Think about that for a second. What are some things you can do this week or next week that are good? Well, we've got that whole food pantry thing going on. You could bring some food for that. Immediately the response pops in your head, I barely got money to buy food for myself. So maybe you don't have money to buy food to take up there, but you could offer to help them put away all those groceries. Give an hour or two to do that. What other good things could you do? What about when you walk in the cafeteria today and you see somebody eating by themselves? Just go on and sit with your little bunch? Or sit down beside that person? Now, as I said to my LA class this week, there's always the chance they're going to be weird, okay? And you're going to think, oh, this was a big mistake. But, it's just lunch. Or you can ask them, come and sit with us. I see you're eating by yourself. Come sit with us. That way it kind of dilutes it if there's more than just you and them. Take a chance to do that. Bring together courage and goodness. Step outside your comfort zone. We've got Operation Inasmuch coming up. That's going to be an opportunity to do something good for somebody else. You may do it with your group, your LA group, or you may do something independently. But that's an opportunity where all of us can kind of do a good blitz for the area. Take those opportunities. Look for opportunities to do something good. Now, it's one thing for me just to say to you, do something good. And it might affect some of you. But I'm inclined to think if we make a commitment in some way to do something good, then we're more inclined to follow through. So, what I want us to do is I want us to read this poem together. If you are willing to commit to do something good, stand up. Okay? If you're willing to commit to do something good, I have minions over here to help me with the reading. They seem hesitant. Okay, so Listen, please. What we're going to do is we're going to read this responsively. If you've been in a Baptist church in the last 20 years, you know how to do this. If you've not, let me give you some direction. I'll read a part, you'll read a part with Dr. Spence and Dr. Watson, okay? This is a poem by Ina Hughes. And the name of it is I Am Responsible. I'll go first. I'm responsible for children who put chocolate fingers everywhere, who like to be tickled, who stomp in puddles and ruin their new pants, who sneak popsicles before dinner, who erase holes in their math books, who can never find their shoes.
But I am also responsible for those who stare at photographers from behind broken windows, who can't bound down the street in a pair of sneakers, who never counted potatoes, who are born in places where we wouldn't be caught dead, who lived in an X-rated world.
I'm responsible for children who bring us sticky kisses and fistfuls of dandelions, who sleep with the dog and bury goldfish, who hug us in a hurry and forget their lunch money, who cover themselves with Band-Aids and sing off key, who squeeze toothpaste all over the sink and who slurp their soup.
But I am also responsible for those who never get dessert, who have no safe blanket to drag behind them, who watch their parents watch them suffer, who don't have rooms to clean up, whose pictures aren't on anybody's dresser, whose monsters are real.
I'm responsible for children who spend all of their allowance before Tuesday, who throw tantrums in the grocery store and pick at their food, who like ghost stories, who shove dirty clothing under the bed, who never rinse out the tub, who get visits from the tooth fairy, who don't like to be kissed in front of the carpool, who squirm in church and scream on the phone, whose tears sometimes make us cry, laugh, and those whose smiles can make us cry.
And I am responsible for those whose nightmares come in the daytime, who will eat anything, who have never seen a dentist, who aren't spoiled by anybody, who go to bed hungry and cry themselves to sleep, who live and move but have no being.
I am responsible for children who want to be carried and for those who must, for those we never give up on, for those who don't get a chance, for those we smother, and for those who will grab the hand of anybody kind enough to offer it. So think about what good thing do you want to do this week? Go forth and be good.